Three, two.
Sorry.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Sorry.
So this is the 199th PC Perspective podcast. You would think after this many episodes they'd be able to figure this out, how the whole starting of it goes, but screw it. We're going now. It's April 25th, 2012. If you care, we're going to talk about. We actually had a pretty busy week in the world of PC hardware. We're going to go through. PCPer.com/podcast is the URL to share. Twitter.com/PCPer, Facebook.com/PCPer. And other such places. YouTube.com/PCPer is a good one as well. So let's get into the final stories of the show by starting off with the Core i7 3770K Ivy Bridge processor review we posted up early this week. This is it's not like hotly anticipated. It's just kind of like we've just known this is coming for a while. It was a matter of when. There were a couple of delays. We kind of had pretty good ideas of what to expect in terms of performance, both on the processor side and the GPU side. I don't think it's a surprise then that the CPU performance is better than Sandy Bridge in terms of just instructions per clock, and the clocks are just a tiny bit higher, not dramatically so. Actually, I think the 3770K is the same clock speeds as the 2700K Sandy Bridge.
You are correct.
Okay. So any of the performance differences we see between the 2600K, which is what I had to test, and the 3770K are, mostly related to the IPC changes and a little bit to the clock. This is the first processor to be released on the 22 nanometer technology. This is the Tri-Gate transistor. It has some interesting properties from a heat and performance standpoint in that it runs very, very low power at idle, and it runs very low power at its TDP, at its standard kind of stock shipped TDP. It's a 77 watt part. The 3770K is a 77 watt part. Do you remember the TDP of Sandy Bridge was? Was it 80 or 85?
No, it's like 95 watts.
Okay. So it was quite a bit higher. So there are benefits to the 22 nanometer process here that we're seeing. Now, what is interesting, and I don't know how much of this is technology versus just processor design and this kind of stuff. Jumping straight ahead to the whole overclocking deal, we saw some pretty intense temperature spikes when increasing the voltage to the CPU. I think nominal voltage on this is like 1.1. We had it as high as 1.3 in our overclocking testing, which is not very high if you've done Sandy Bridge overclocking. 1.3, is not really anything to be worried about. We were able to hit 135, 1.4, 1.45 pretty regularly without a whole lot of worry in terms of temperatures and that kind of stuff. When we were hitting 1.3, I was able to get up to 4.7 gigahertz. So more than a gigahertz overclock over the base frequency of the processor by default. Performance was good, but what was unfortunate is we saw temperatures in the mid-80s C. And we're using not like an Intel cheap stock cooler or anything like that. We're using a high-quality Corsair H80, dual 120 millimeter fans on a larger radiator, self-contained water cooling kit. So one of the better kind of simplistic. I guess I'll still consider these air coolers, even though they're water cooled on there. But it's all self-contained, and it gets pretty hot. When we had JJ in studio from ASUS doing some of their overclocking demonstrations, he mentioned that it's not uncommon for overclocked processors at 1.3, 1.32 to hit 90 to 95 Celsius. And when you start getting into those temperatures, you start getting into the
thermal shutdown.
There you go, where the processor just physically can't handle that heat, so it's going to downclock to a manageable level.
And in Laramie, Wyoming, 95 degrees, actually 93 degrees, boils water.
Oh, does it really?
I wonder why we can't cook up here.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, you get these benefits of these lower TDPs at its kind of standard clock, but for hardcore overclocking, you're gonna run into some temperature issues, I think, compared to what Sandy Bridge. I've seen some other people kind of decide with overclocking that, if you're I would consider the majority of our readers, the majority of our listeners are kind of like the mainstream overclocker. You're gonna do more than just hit the OC Genie button on your motherboard, but you're not gonna use LN2. You're not doing that kind of stuff. And even I think the number of people that are doing really high end water blocks and that kind of stuff is pretty minimal. And I think for the majority of people that just want to do, well, that's how can I get with this kind of $50, $60, $70 cooler that I was going to buy anyway, might as well overclock with it. You're still going to be able to get extra performance out of it. They're going to run a little bit hotter, but it's not going to degrade the lifespan of your processor by any kind of measurable degree, at least as far as I know. But it's a new process tech, so anything is possible. Josh, do you have any thoughts on kind of the thermal TDP issue on this before I just get into a little bit more of the blanket performance?
Yeah, it's actually quite fascinating. You would think that with a smaller process, with their Tri-Gate and stuff like that they would have, lower voltages going at higher clock speeds and still achieving about the same TDP. Well, they've got the same clock speeds. They've lowered the voltage, they've lowered the TDP, but once you start going above that, you see some massive hikes in where the TDP's going, where the temperature's going. I mean, hitting 90 to 95 degrees Celsius on a CPU is kind of insane, considering that, for like example, AMD, they don't recommend you go over 65C. Intel has, some better tolerances there, and you can obviously go higher before throttling kicks in. But still, it's kind of nuts. I mean, we do not expect to see, for example, taking a Sandy Bridge product, taking it to 4.8 gigahertz, it being stable and still hitting maybe at max 70 to 75 C on pretty decent cooling at full load. But when you're seeing at with decent cooling at the same clock speed and higher voltage, you're seeing 90 to 95 C.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with the process. Mm-hmm. It's almost like there's something kind of different with the mix. I know that sounds kind of nebulous, and if you look at behind me, you can see that nebulous is nearly my middle name. But you really can't put your finger on where the issue is, other than this is a brand new process. It's got a lot of new technology in there. The 3D FinFET technology is very different. It's interesting. It does a lot of neat things. But it seems that we're at the point where it's a pretty small die. And as such, the surface area is significantly smaller than what we had before. And you still have, you've got slightly larger amount of transistors on that product, but the actual die space is really not, it's really small. And to have that kind of power go through it, that number of transistors, the much more advanced graphics portion that they have integrated into it, it seems like they've kind of hit a spot where they just can't dissipate the heat that this product, even at 1.1 volts and up to 1.3 volts, which is still not a huge amount for a CPU of this size, it just can't adequately dissipate that, and so the temperature goes up way, way, way high, really quick. And even though it's got an integrated heat spreader in there, it just can't handle the thermal load on that small of a die size. So.
I agree that I don't think there's anything wrong with the technology. I don't think Intel has broken something or whatever that. But they built the 22 nanometer process not to go after the super high end market, not to go after the super high end clock speeds. Right? They're not going to build a part that's going to go 4.7 gigahertz. And so when it's not planned for it, sometimes you get overclocking benefits as a side reaction or a side result of something else they did in the process or something else they did in design. Well, in this case, what we'll probably see is the opposite of that. I haven't done any testing yet, but from what I've been told by Intel and a couple of the motherboard guys is this processor will downvolt very, very well. You'll be able to run this processor at 3.5, 3.0 gigahertz at less than a volt, right? And this is what they were targeting, right? They were targeting getting these ULV parts out as soon as possible, being able to have as high a performance under as low a voltage to extend battery life on notebooks and tablets and those types of things in the future. That's what this was really keyed at. Now, Intel's a big enough company, they would be able to target both on the same process, for different parts, but there's really no need for them for that. Again, there's no pressure on the high end. They still have the fastest processors out there. There's not really any competition in that regard. They'll progress up that performance ladder as they see fit.
You mean Bulldozer is just not, overturning the grocery cart?
Say it ain't so.
No, and not even close. I mean, let's go back to the review itself. We redid our whole CPU test bed for this article. We removed a lot of tests that were kind of old, outdated, and useless. Added in a few new ones that I thought were more relevant. We updated the hardware in the test bed. We're using Corsair AX 650 power supplies. Corsair also sent us their brand new Vengeance memory that does 2400 megahertz. We're going to do some testing with USB performance scaling and graphics performance scaling as we increase the memory speeds. I think we had some of the first 2400 memory to come out of Corsair. We're using their H80 as the cooler, as I mentioned before. That's for our overclocking and all that kind of stuff. Kingston sent some memory. We're using MSI motherboard. Surely people who are listening to this realize the Ivy Bridge is a socket 1155 processor. It is pen compatible with Sandy Bridge motherboards and Sandy Bridge chipsets like P67 and Z68 if your motherboard BIOS is updated to support it. Not all of them are, but a strong majority of them are, even to the point where Intel brought that up in their press presentation is like, hey, look, we've got this cross compatibility. You can use Sandy Bridge and Z77 boards, and you can use Ivy Bridge and Z68 boards. And that's never anything Intel has ever wanted to talk about before because they've usually been pretty awful at it.
That socket 775 for the Pentium 4, it's not compatible with the Core
socket
2.
75. Yeah, no, sorry about that. Yeah, don't plug that in. That would be awful.
Stuff will blow up.
It's exploding. So we did Sandra synthetic testing, Handbrake, X264, Cinebench, and Pavare. We added a new one that I thought was interesting called Basemark, which is actually OpenCL performance. And this is the first time we've used this. They kind of came to us and said, hey, we've got this new test. And OpenCL being all the rage, I figured this is as good a time as any to kind of give it a look and see what it does. It does physics simulation, it does ray trace rendering, it does image manipulation and video manipulation. And the kind of summation of all of our performance results is this. The 3770K is faster than 2600K by anywhere from 5 to 15%, depending on the application. And it's also faster than the Core i7-3820, which is the Sandy Bridge E processor, because it's essentially still a quad-core, hyper-threaded part. It just happens to have 4 channels of memory instead of 2. The only processor that now beats it is the 3960X, and obviously the 3930K will do that as well. But those are both 6-core processors with hyper-threading, so they can do 12 threads.
And almost a grand more.
Well, the 3960 is. The 3930 is couple $100 more when
double
these
the price.
Parts actually come out. Yeah. So, the from the performance side of things, I see no reason to continue buying Sandy Bridge unless you are that really you consider yourself a super high end overclocker and you maybe want to have the flexibility that the additional voltage headroom might give you in terms of clock speed. I was running a 3770K on a full-size MSI C77 GD65 motherboard with the H80 and an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 560 Ti graphics card installed. And, I mean, our idle power consumption numbers are 55 watts or so. It's really, really impressive to see what they've all been able to do. If you look at the power consumption page, you will see kind of like the main difference between Ivy Bridge, Sandy Bridge E, and some interesting numbers there. Like total load power consumption on Ivy Bridge on the 3770K is 117 watts. It's 143 watts on Sandy Bridge, and it's 223 watts on Sandy Bridge E. So you're talking more than 100 watts additional power for those 2 cores on the Sandy Bridge E processor, which is quite a lot. And then if you take a look at the poor AMD FX 8150. This is the bulldozer architecture. It uses almost 200 watts of power under a full load, which is, we're talking 80 to 85 watts more power than Ivy Bridge, and it doesn't even really come that close in terms of performance. Like it's not really that close at all. The only other thing I'll point out is look at the idle power consumption of the Core i7-920. It's like 124 watts compared to, we're talking, that's our oldest generation processor used in our testing, and it shows you just how far we have come in terms of idle power numbers and that kind of stuff. So it's Ivy Bridge is a great desktop processor. Oh, of course I need to mention the graphics side of things. This is the CPU side didn't see a big upgrade. The GPU side is where they consider it a tick plus, right, in the tick-tock model that Intel develops on now. And the HD 4000 graphics is actually pretty impressive, able to keep up with the Radeon HD 5570 almost. We were able to play Left 4 Dead 2 at very high settings at 1080p, almost 40 frames a second, Deus Ex over 35 frames per second, and Dirt 3 over 30 frames per second at 1080p. These aren't going to take away your discrete graphics card if you already have one. But what this does do is it once again creeps into that lower end sub $50 video card market that AMD and NVIDIA really make a lot of volume and a lot of their profits on. And it just eats in a little bit to it. We're talking 45% performance jump for the HD 4000 graphics compared to the HD 3000 graphics on games like Dirt 3. That's a significant percentage. Now we're talking about going from 22 frames per second to 33 frames per second, which maybe doesn't seem that great at 1080p low settings on Dirt. But I think for the average person that just buys, we've got, I think it's packed up, but we have an Asus Mini ITX Z77 motherboard that has a full-size PCI Express by 16 slot on it. But if you don't want to use it, you'll be able to play games at 1080p resolutions with settings turned down, right? And and again, this all comes in under 77 watts TDP. We're still talking about incredibly low power consumption numbers. It's really impressive stuff. Quick sync performance improved as well, pretty dramatically. And the 3770K, when you can buy it, will be available for $313.
$313
compared to the 2600K that's available today for $309 and the 2700K that's $339. I assume those prices will probably come down some. Okay, I lied. The 2600K actually went up, and the 2700K.
The 2600K is a collector's item now.
The 2700.
They're only going to increase in value.
Yeah,
so buy now.
That was like the Phenom 2 X6 processors, right? They became more expensive because people realized they wanted those more than they wanted the Bulldozer. So the 3960X, the Sandy Bridge E, is over $1,000. But you do get a free Trackmania 2 coupon with purchase, which is like, it's like a $20 value right there. Yeah. So I think if I were building a new system today, and it's very likely we would be rebuilding a video streaming system in the not too distant future, I think Ivy Bridge 3770K makes a great option if you're not going to go with super high end something for that product. But for a desktop user, 3770K is a great part. And I don't want to say that $300 for a processor that this much performance is impressive. We always talk about that on the GPU side. We maybe don't talk about it enough on the CPU side. But being able to get that much performance for $300 is impressive. The only downside is if you're a gamer, if you're an enthusiast, you're paying for 30% of that die space that you're never going to use necessarily with the HD 4000 graphics. So I don't know. What do you guys? You guys have any thoughts?
If you do the GPU compression with it, stuff like that, it's still usable.
Yeah, and we. But the thing, that's a very small portion of the die, even smaller than what the graphics as a whole does. It doesn't use shaders for that. It's using fixed regions for that. So in theory, you should be able to do that without HD 4000 graphics or whatever, without the integrated graphics. But Intel has kind of combined those two items into one kind of media architecture on that side of the CPU. So overall, I was really impressed with it. I didn't expect to see. I expected to see less CPU performance benefits than I did, so I was, glad to see that. That's always a plus. And lower temperatures at normal. Yeah, I agree. $313. So they're
not taking to the woodshed.
They're not, and I don't think they could have, knowing that the 2600K and the 2700K Sandy Bridge parts were already out there. If they had charged $500 for this part, it wouldn't make any sense. People would say, well, the performance differences aren't that much, and you've got this temperature issue at the super high end. But overall, I think it's a really, really great processor, really good base for a gaming system.
And you've got to admit that their margins, even though 22 nanometer is a new process, their margins have probably, well, I mean, they've stayed the same, but over the lifespan of this product, they're going to increase tremendously as compared to a 2600K, especially because, how much has the 2600K gone down in price in the last year and a half?
Like, not really at all, has it?
None.
Yeah.
Boy, the joys of not having any competition.
Yeah, that is the joys for Intel and the crap we have to deal with for that. The other thing I'll mention real quick, and I hate that I'm making this a quick portion of it, but we talked for a really long time about Ivy Bridge. Make sure you go check out Matt Smith's review of the Core i7-3720QM. This is the mobile series part. And for all those reasons I said that the HD 4000 didn't really make a whole lot of sense, it wouldn't be super attractive to users on the desktop side, at least people who watch us, it will be very attractive to users on the mobile side. The HD 4000 graphics, he does some gaming tests with it. I forget, he compares it basically in equal to performance of the NVIDIA GT 525 GPU, which really doesn't even mean much to me. What I thought was interesting, the system that Intel decided to send out for Ivy Bridge mobile testing was the Core i7-3720QM, 8 gigs of memory, 15-inch screen, 1080p display, kind of a good multimedia system. But it included an NVIDIA GT 630M Kepler discrete graphics on it. And to me, that totally...
they're admitting defeat.
That's what it kind of felt like. It was like, as a user, I appreciate that on one side, because it's like, okay, they're saying, look, we think we make good products, but some of our competition / partners make great compelling add-ons to it. And so here's one that shows you the whole package. But the whole spiel behind Ivy Bridge has been how great the new graphics architecture is. It can now support 3 display outputs, those types of things. And by including a discrete card in with your mobile platform, it kind of says, it's almost like it's saying, well, we really can't, maybe it's not good enough, so have this discrete high-end part too.
We can't compete with
never done
Llano in graphics. But we whoop them in CPU.
Yeah, and it was just confusing. It was just confusing to me. The upgrade in the graphics, for those of you who didn't know, the HD 3000 had 12 EUs, execution units. This new version has 16. So we're basically seeing a 33% increase in, is that right? Yeah, 33% increase in your theoretical compute power, but those execution units have been improved some. They've improved on the texture and filtering side as well. That's why we're seeing different, sometimes more than 30% performance increases, because the clock speeds are relatively the same. But definitely go check out Matt's review, because he tests the processor. He compares it to, what's he compare it to? We've got Sandy Bridge obviously in there, the AMD A6, the Fusion Llano APU is in there, and it's obviously the fastest processor available. It doesn't do that great, excuse me, it doesn't do that great in battery life, but I think a lot of that is just because we're at the first implementation of it. I'd be curious to see once we get some retail available notebooks what they're like. I imagine it will be better because of the TDP differences we saw and the lower voltages that these processors will be able to run at. In terms of graphics performance, what I think is interesting, if you look at the graphics performance page on this review, look at the differences between when he's running it just on the CPU versus when he's using the GT 630M. And there are performance differences for sure. But like in 3D Mark 06, which is a very old test, the differences are pretty small percentage-wise compared to 3D Mark 11. And then if you start to look at, he tests Dawn of War 2, he tests Just Cause 2, Battlefield 3, you look at the difference of 30 frames per second versus 25 frames per second. That's not a huge gap that Intel needs to make up.
Well,
So
it changes
that's-
even more when he goes for 1080p.
Yes, it does. It does
All
go
of a
up.
sudden,
some.
Intel's sitting on top with the 630M and isn't doing too bad by itself either.
Right. So if we look at 1080p on medium, you're looking at 19, almost 20 frames per second versus 16 frames per second. Now, neither of those I would consider very playable resolutions for that game, but it gives you an idea of the amount of power that HD 4000 actually has. And again, kind of why I'm a little bit surprised why Intel didn't negate having a discrete solution altogether in this platform, to try to kind of stand on its own. So he also gave the mobile side of the processor an editor's choice, so clean sweep for Intel on there. I think it will be, in the long run, more important for people on the mobile side than on the desktop side. If you have a Sandy Bridge system today, you don't need to upgrade to Ivy Bridge. In terms of, like, if you're a desktop user, you're not going to see a big improvement in gaming performance. You're not going to see a big improvement in even your general performance, really. But if you're on a Core 2 Quad 6600, what idiot would be on that still, right? Maybe you're on a Linfield, a Core i5 860. Is that a processor, or is that an 87 or an i7? I don't know.
i7 860, maybe i7 850.
I use those two examples because I have two systems that I use every day that are based on those two processors. Then moving to an Ivy Bridge-based rig is going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to get better performance, lower power, lower heat. And there you go. I don't know what else to say. So that's Ivy Bridge. Yay for Ivy Bridge. It's here. We're going to have a ton of Z77 stuff to talk about. Make sure you go. Actually, we'll just throw that up here real quick. We'll stop with that for now.
Stop.
It's
Hammer
late.
time.
We talked for a while. So let me actually change things around a little bit here on you. I'm going to move your quarterly reports discussions, Josh, together a little bit further down. It'll give me enough time to walk away and that kind of stuff. I want to show you a crowbar that I got sent. This doesn't happen to me all the time, but this was pretty funny when I don't think I actually have it there. Yeah, it's at the house. It's packed away.
You're not supposed to pack the crowbar.
I was in the shower. My wife was asleep.
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
I was in the shower, Josh. My wife was sleeping.
There it
FedEx
was.
comes to the door, as often happens. So she has to wake up and go downstairs and get the FedEx driver and sign for the package or whatever. And I get a showering, but dressed. She's like, something came to you from NVIDIA. It's in a graphics card size box. She's been around long enough. She knows what these things are. I was like, oh, okay. I think I know what this is. All right, that's cool. Great. I'm glad I got it this early. Blah blah blah. So I go down there and I open it up and I come back upstairs and I say, well, it wasn't a video card. It was this. It was this, and it's a crowbar with an inscription on it. If we can show it on the video, it says, "For use in case of zombies or
Falcon Punch.
And then the
And
NVIDIA
so
logo.
you approached your wife with this crowbar in your bedroom.
Yes, she might have been a little groggy still.
Maybe a little groggy, a little scared. Open
Yeah,
up,
well,
honey.
Ryan, I'm confused. Where is this video?
It's not a video. It's just a picture. If we look in the show notes, it'll say NVIDIA continues to tease, sends us a crowbar to find those pictures. No video, only photos. But the funny part that I thought, well, just people on the internet are nerds, right? They immediately were like, hey, that's not a crowbar, that's a flat bar. And I was like, you know what? I don't really care.
It's true.
It is true. No, I
It's
like
not
I looked it
Half-Life
up.
3, I'll tell you
crowbars.
that.
Come on. We're talking marketing here.
Yeah, I know. So, other than that, that was all that was in the box was this crowbar. So either one, Half-Life 3 is going to come out and it'll be an NVIDIA exclusive and only play on NVIDIA graphics cards, or they're going to send us something that requires a crowbar to open. In which case, interesting, maybe.
Well, NVIDIA's sent you some pretty odd packages in the past for a new graphics card release, haven't
the
they?
oddest one is still the AMD sending me the look-alike Viagra pills that were actually jelly beans, energy jelly beans. What did they call those?
Oh, that was a while back.
Viatrol or something, vitriol. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But that was the weirdest. But those jelly beans were good. And I'll use this pry bar to, I don't know, take down a wall, maybe pry into somebody's door while they're not there. Something useful, right? I don't. It's just weird. So we'll see. We'll see what that is.
Or zombies.
Yes. Or zombies, right? Although we have this zombie discussion all the time, or at least I hear it all the time. I don't want to get that close to a zombie. I don't think, if I can help it.
That's
Not
kind of a
very
small
long.
implement instrument.
You got to worry about it getting stuck in their head and pulling it out, and yeah, doesn't sound like fun.
So do we have a sponsor today, or are we skipping
No,
that?
we don't. No, we don't. We don't have any. I figured we'd round out with no sponsors. Sponsor free for this week. Z77 motherboards, real quick. Go to PCPro.com, check out the demonstrations that ASUS came in, and JJ from ASUS came in and sat with us and talked with us. We did a lot of it live. We talked about some of the ASUS motherboard features, which turned out to be really good. But some of the stuff we couldn't show you live, and that was like the Ivy Bridge overclocking. If you're interested in the overclocking, there's a video on overclocking. We show you overclocking in the UEFI, not allowed to call it the BIOS anymore, in the UEFI, or overclocking through their AI Suite software, both of which worked really well. I don't remember how fast we got on it, but we showed the auto overclocking. We showed the kind of system involved in that. It was pretty impressive. We showed WiDi on the desktop. It's not an ASUS exclusive thing, but they were there to show it, right? It was like, hey, look, if you use an Intel wireless controller on your desktop machine, right? Because all of their Z77 motherboards are going to have wireless, including the ROG boards, I think. Maybe the Gene board specifically are going to have that. But you now can use WiDi support on it, which is pretty cool. Wireless display stuff. And then we showed Fan Expert 2, USB 3 boost, Wi-Fi Go! Exclamation point, and some other stuff. We even had a couple more demonstrations that we are still not allowed to show you for really stupid reasons, revolving around that TB header on all the motherboards. So that's stupid.
Thunderbird, the really cheap wine, right?
Yeah.
No, it's Tampa Bay.
Tuberculosis, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Draft's coming up. Come on.
And also, Jeremy, did you read about this? This is really just a news release. ASUS overclocking Ivy Bridge to 7 gigahertz.
Yeah. So with all of the complaints that we just sort of made about the fact that Ivy Bridge is one hot little chip, it also overclocks really, really, really well if you can slap some LN2 on it. ASUS, and they're pegging this up to the design of the PZ77V Deluxe board and the extra effort that they've put into creating this board, but they were hitting 7 gigahertz with that processor that Ryan just mentioned, the 3770K, which is, pretty much a nasty, nasty world record. They're running SuperPi at just unbelievable speeds. 3D Mark is, they went back to 3D Mark 2001.
Yeah, that's kind of like the benchmark aficionado. That's
big. It's really
it scales
big.
better with CPUs. Yeah.
Yeah. 164,589 marks. Can you tell the difference between 300 and 800?
8.2 gigahertz.
Yeah, sorta.
Hmm.
On the other hand, I'm not quite sure that it hit 3 gigahertz or on the memory, did it?
It did. Yes, they said they had some memory.
The AMD chip.
Oh, I don't know.
Probably,
no, it's not a record in terms of clock speed. It's just a record in terms of performance, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, the world record Bulldozer 8 point whatever it was, 8.4, was a single core, right? A single module running at that speed. And this is a quad core processor running at 7 gigahertz, and it's a better quad core processor too. So that it's more impressive just from a performance standpoint. I don't know when the last time I ran Aquamark was, but 536,638 marks sounds impressive.
Wait. People still have copies of Aquamark?
Does it run in DOS? I don't.
It's freeware now, isn't it?
It's a DOS box.
I didn't know it was never not freeware. So that's interesting. Okay, let's Josh, let's talk about maybe
Can we talk about Intel first, since they announced before AMD?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. But let's talk less about the finances stuff, because it's not as interesting as maybe what the other stuff is.
Oh, jeez. You know,
basically what I'm telling you is I'm looking at the
deal
clock.
with you all the time, Ryan. You're just always, cramping my style.
Not anymore.
Thanks. Plus that, I need to, go to the article so I can refresh my.
You just
overworked
published this
mind.
today.
Yeah.
And he's already
That one
suppressed
was
it.
a couple of days ago. Plus, it was
Oh, okay.
last week. So
Oh,
anyway,
all right.
Intel announced Q1 earnings. They did well. Shocking. $12.9 billion in gross revenue. $2.7 billion in net income. They're making money hand over fist, and they still refuse to send out a decent amount of review products to people who need them, like me.
Moving on.
Anyway, Intel, they actually they had a good quarter. Apparently, the hard drive whole fiasco of flooding in Thailand, it's really behind the industry. That is no longer much of a factor in selling products. Certainly, if you look at the retail side, you see that hard drive prices are still higher than they were about 7 or 8 months ago, but they have gone down dramatically. And when we talk to OEMs, the prices have gone down to where they expect them to be for this time. And so that's all behind us. Intel was able to sell a significant number of processors. But the thing that they took advantage of this hard drive situation by lowering their production of 32 nanometer parts, namely the Sandy Bridge and Sandy Bridge E products, and they started converting a lot of that line space into 22 nanometer stuff to have a very aggressive ramp on these new Ivy Bridge processors. Now, in Q2, they're expecting a whopping 25% of their production to be 22 nanometer, and this is literally unheard of in the history of Intel. They have never ramped a product as fast and as hard as they had Ivy Bridge, and you can certainly see why. They get good yields. They have really good TDPs. They still have industry-leading performance in terms of the CPU, and they're able to sell them at the same price as their older products, but they're getting more dies per wafer with these Ivy Bridge products, and they're also improving on their graphics performance. So this is a big win-win for Intel. And even though their margins have gone down a little bit, that's primarily because it takes a little bit more time, energy, and lower yields at 22 nanometers compared to the more mature 32 nanometer to sell these parts. And so margins have taken a small hit. It's going to take a even bigger hit, but still only like 2 or 3 percentage points for the next quarter. And so Intel is really, really happy about where they're at in terms of what their product mix is, what they're able to offer, how their yields are going, and really their CPU performance advantage over their primary competitor. So Intel is kind of sitting in the catbird seat, at least
They
with
have been
this
for a while.
generation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
and,
why they don't feel like they have to release the new processor. Just talk about it.
pretty much, yeah, because you can't buy.
Let me answer that.
Answer
I
it.
emailed them on Tuesday. What's today? Wednesday. I emailed them on Tuesday. And I was like, hey, I expected these processors to be on sale. I'm talking about Ivy Bridge. And they were like, "Oh yeah, they're not going to be the ad and sales embargo is on the 29th. Didn't we tell you that?" And I was like, "No, you didn't." So they're not even supposed to be on sale till the 29th. I didn't put that in the article because I didn't know about it. Anyway, I apologize. Move on.
So 4 days later, you can buy one of these products, maybe, hopefully, unless of course Dell has eaten them all, which is a distinct possibility. But still, 25% of the production and sales is going to be this singular product, essentially, because right now they only have the one die out, and we're going to have, the i5s and the i7s. The i7s have the hyperthreading enable, i5s do not. And so we will not see the dual-core Ivy Bridge products until a little bit later. So everything is just this one particular die that they are producing hand over fist. So big days for Intel. They've had they've been pushing Ultrabooks a lot. I don't know if you've heard of them. Have you heard of Ultrabooks, Ryan?
Will I Am told me about Ultrabooks, and they look awesome.
Yeah,
because he makes music on them.
Yeah. Apparently, they have about 26 design wins for Ultrabooks, which, when you kind of think about it, is somewhat impressive, but somewhat not. But if we consider before 2010, 2011, the only Ultrabook type product out there was the MacBook Air Pro. And now we finally got 26 other versions of that damn thing out there that are going to cost significantly less than the MacBook product.
Yep.
What?
So that's the hope, yeah.
Yeah, small amount less. And Intel is hoping that the design wins and the money that they're pumping into this will allow them to get the prices down on these Ultrabooks, as well as like touch-enabled Ultrabooks, to be $200, $300 cheaper than what we were expecting them to be. So this is an area that they're really gung-ho about. They're really pushing it, and they really want to get this out in the market because they think that people will love these products if they get them into their hands. But it's still going to be a struggle because the technology, while pretty much there, I mean, there's still a lot of obstacles to it, especially in terms of thermals, in terms of touch, and them wanting to hit the size standards that they're looking at. So. It's no surprise that there are only 26 design wins so far. But again, the year is still young. Once we kind of hit this point, that hopefully things will, kind of snowball, and we'll get a lot more products out there. Smartphones. That's one area that Intel is really, really, really wanting to get into. I believe that they estimate that there's something like 450 million smartphones that will be shipped this year. And these are smartphones.
0 of which will go to Josh's house.
Well, okay, maybe this summer, if I ever make some money or win a lottery, I'll get a smartphone. But Intel will have a very small share of that with their Medfield-based processors. Now, 3 big products that came out was from what? How do you pronounce orange in French? Orange? Orange.
I think it's orange.
Orange. There's
Heathens.
Orange, huh? Anyway, they've got a Medfield-based phone that they're releasing in Europe. Lenovo has the K series of phone, and Nokia has the, what the heck is that called? The something 900?
Lumia
900?
Yeah,
that's not releasing.
Intel. That's not an Intel
I
part.
thought the 900, or is that just a... I thought that was Intel.
No.
That's just Windows 8.
I don't know what else to tell you. It's just not. I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, they've got several. Intel does have several phones around the world that have their Medfield processors. Lenovo's probably the biggest one. It will have the largest reach in China, and certainly that will be a foothold for Intel. I think AnandTech just had a review. Loco or Coco or some Lava. I don't know. But that's basically another
Lava.
Intel phone. There's only 3 or 4 designs around the world that utilize this processor. And so far, the reviews have been decent. But Intel still has a long ways to go to be able to compete even with NVIDIA in terms of how many processors they ship for the smartphones. And, I mean, they have a huge mountain to climb before they get to Samsung and Qualcomm, much less Apple, who is, one of the larger smartphone producers with their A series of GPU CPUs that are based on ARM and whatever else. So, this is an area that Intel feels there is a huge amount of growth, and not only that, but they feel that within the next couple of years, there's going to be 1 billion smartphones shipped a year, and that is absolutely huge. Even if you sell a chip that is $35, I mean, getting a significant portion of 1 billion units shipped and sold, that's just massive. You can do the do the math there, Jeremy. Even you, with your
It's
Canadian education.
It's a lot of money.
It is $1 or $2.
All right. So that's more than enough about Intel and how much money they made. What about AMD?
Well, after taking themselves out of the cat box about 9 months ago, we're finally seeing some good growth out of the company. Now, I wrote this article today. It actually just flowed out. Next thing you know, there's some 4,600 words, and
Careful, you gotta see a doctor for that.
I do, because it was effluviant or something. But they announced
Typographical diarrhea.
well. Yeah. You want to hear a good joke?
Uh-oh.
No, my microphone is muted, but I said no.
What the hell are you
I think
unpacking?
Ryan's trying to pack while we're talking.
I'm getting my pick of the week ready. If you will finish talking about AMD,
Is it really that time already?
yeah, it's 11 my time.
Good Lord, man.
I know. We
Anyway,
talked about Ivy Bridge
Intel
for a
had-
long time.
They had a decent quarter. It was surprising
We're talking about
considering
AMD
past
now.
year. What? Email.
You said Intel.
AMD.
You said Intel.
AMD.
Never mind.
No, I said
I
AMD.
apologize.
You're not listening. Anyway, AMD, they had a decent quarter. $1.59 billion in sales, which pales in comparison to Intel and their $12.9 billion. But AMD, for themselves, have done well. They have really been kind of stepping away from bulldozer technology and relying more on their graphics technology. Llano, Brazos, these things are the prime movers for AMD right now. And even though they've had 3 consecutive quarters of server growth, it still is just overshadowed by what Intel is able to offer. And we don't even really want to talk about discrete desktop processors without any kind of graphics component because, as you know, Bulldozer is not done well. It's hot running. My review showed it to be underperforming for all that heat and power. It's just not a great thing. But AMD is very bullish on the future. They fixed a lot of issues with their upcoming Trinity processor. Not only do they have what will be industry-leading graphics technology and performance, but it seems like they have shored up a lot of the TDP issues that kind of bogged down the Bulldozer processor. This is, of course, the pile driver based technology and architecture. And while it will offer some IPC advantages, the big push is going to be solving the TDP issues that we saw with the previous Bulldozer products. So that is going to be released here in this quarter 2. They talked about that. They talked about Brazos 2.0, which is a refined 40 nanometer part based on the Bobcat architecture. It will have improved performance per clock. It will have improved performance per watt as well. And the Fusion Controller Hub will have more features on it. And so far, AMD has said that they have set records with the amount of design wins for both Trinity and Brazos 2.0. And if we look back in the past year, Brazos, the original, was one of the better performers for AMD altogether. They sold something in between for the last year and a half, 35 to 45 million of these products. And when you consider the base price of finished die as compared to what they're selling it for, this has been a really good area of profit for AMD, and it's something that they've really been proud of, really been happy with, and consumers have certainly been happy with it as well. So when we put all these things together, AMD is sitting in a lot better place than they have been in quite a while. Hector Ruiz, as far as I'm concerned, he drove AMD off the tracks. Dirk Meyer, he did his best, but he was an engineer rather than kind of a businessman. And while he got them somewhat back on track in terms of technology, it really wasn't until... Oh, yeah, thanks. Who the heck is calling at 9 o'clock at night in Laramie? Makes no sense. But anyway, after Dirk left, they had the big search, and Rory came in. Rory really injected a lot of energy into the company. He cut a lot of people off. He fired a lot of folks, made them move on out. And at first, I was not entirely sure. I thought he was just kind of pandering to Wall Street, not Walmart, but Wall Street. And but it kind of turns out that he was removing a lot of the excess weight from AMD, and they certainly seem to be executing at a higher level now than they have been in the last couple of years. So there's a lot of upside to AMD. I mean, you need to read the entire article. It's kind of a long read. Some things come out that I haven't covered, obviously. But AMD is not in the position they were 9 months ago. 9 months ago, their stock price is like $2.50. Now they're sitting around $7.50, $8. And analysts look at it and they see, hey, you know what? That they're starting to push things out a whole lot better. They have a philosophy that it seems more compatible and more competitive to what Intel currently offers. And certainly Trinity is not going to overturn the world in terms of CPU performance. It's going to be better than Bulldozer, but it's not going to get anywhere close to Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge. What really they're going to rely on is the graphics technology that this brings and the overall TDPs of the product and price performance. And so price performance is something that AMD has always competed very well on, but they've never made a huge amount of money because of that. Now we finally have a point where their graphics technology is a huge step ahead of what Intel is able to do. We see a lot more workloads that will show the advantage to AMD on the graphics, especially in more simple games, and even higher end stuff that people will run on their notebooks and desktops with these products on there. And AMD is very bullish about this. It's a big deal for them, and we hope that they do well, because certainly we need a good competitor for Intel. Intel, as far as they're concerned, they will bleed us for every dime that we have, because they're taking the penny out of circulation everywhere. But they will get complacent, and without any kind of competition, that's always an issue that we face.
Yeah, agreed. So the editorial you wrote up today was detailed and good. If you want more kind of Josh's thoughts and theories on where AMD is going in the future behind its incredibly energetic CEO, give that a read. Now, we still have Alan on the podcast, I assume.
We do? Where is he?
I think
he's falling asleep.
Is he there?
Alan?
Let's put the camera on.
I'm hiding.
No, he's hiding. We've got one little storage nugget here for you today. Tell us about this Thunderbolt enclosure.
M-Link makes an external PCI Express to Thunderbolt enclosure. And it doesn't work with any video cards because there's no driver support. So it pretty much only works with, I think, a couple of Atto RAID cards and some Fiber Channel network cards. And that's about it. So
is it really cheap?
It's
the
$400.
I'm guessing no.
Oh.
Where is it? Let's see here.
$400.
Oh, yeah. Is that all?
What do I get for $400?
That's a little expensive considering there's nothing in the box when you get it.
Air will be inside the box.
So if you really want to install something external to your MacBook over Thunderbolt, you really
now
want
these
it to go
they're going to be Ivy Bridge motherboards, Z77 motherboards with Thunderbolt. So I am going to be very curious to see how these things perform compared to USB 3, what the advantages are, and if anybody cares enough to buy that stuff. So
yeah, even if they're, I mean, I don't know. USB 3 can pretty much max out a good SSD anyway.
Getting pretty close.
So
yeah.
So I really don't see the point of this. If it does, even if say they were matched and they were equal, well, you can get a USB 3 external enclosure for an awful lot cheaper than $400.
And it's backwards compatible, and I think there's a lot of benefits to USB 3. But now Thunderbolt has a better technology base if it were to catch on and be very popular and things were to come down in price, and I didn't have to spend $60 to get a cable for it, right?
Does Monster make that cable?
No, Apple does. So same thing.
Just as bad, yeah.
So the same thing.
There's fairies in it instead of magic.
All right. That is going to round up
massaged
our news.
electrons.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Totally worth it. We're going to get into our hardware software picks of the week. You already saw me unboxing this.
Ooh.
It's a golden box.
This is the ECS Z77H2AX golden board. But don't mind that it's the black extreme golden board because that's kind of counterintuitive. I have motherboard number 12 out of 200. Apparently they're only making 200 of these motherboards.
So they'll be cheap.
Oh, I'm sure they're going to be...
So wait a minute. I was reading about ECS boards even today, and there was one board I was looking at where they had the regular edition and then like the Black Extreme Edition, but the Black Extreme Edition or something enthusiast edition was actually had less features than the one without any extra names.
I didn't see this one. All I know about this motherboard, to be completely honest with you, is it's gold.
It's gold.
There's
doesn't have a gun on it.
Their boards.
Look,
yeah, there's no guns or bullets.
There's no gun shaped.
Nice.
There's no nickel plated freaking.
This is a totally
knives.
different motif, gentlemen. This is a totally different motif. This is gold motif, not gun motif.
So do they have mount points for the necklace chain?
Have they replaced the teeth with
that comes with the
grill?
power supply. That's the cables for the power supply.
So actually, while you're zooming in here, I can show
those
you.
two mounting holes on the side are not actually for a case. They're for a chain, so you can hang it around your neck.
The connectors are actually gold. The capacitors, are painted gold on there. I assume it's. I mean, they're not really gold caps, but maybe they are. You can definitely tell some of the things are. They might have been spray painted. I don't know. We'll see when it heats up and runs for a while.
It's bling.
I guess. The arm for the CPU tray is gold.
Really?
Yeah, but I don't really know what's different about it yet other than that. We're just starting to get through all of it. It does have the MSATA port down here at the bottom, so that's a cool feature. And power buttons. And Bluetooth and Wi-Fi's. So that's a plus. So that's my pick.
It's got the bigger GBs.
It's got lots of GBs.
Yeah.
It's got all the biggest GBs you can get, actually. I'm not actually recommending you go buy that until we review it. I just thought it was cool to show off. And it was sitting here. So that's my pick. Jeremy, what's next?
Well, anyone who deals with Microsoft probably has a Hotmail account still. And if you ever tried out SkyDrive and uploaded even the smallest little bit of a file to it, apparently you can upgrade for free to 25 gigabytes worth of free storage online, which may not be as cool as a bear with chainsaws for arms, but that would certainly solve my cherry blossom problem. On the other hand, hey, you're getting what you pay for. So why not grab 25 gigs free storage from Microsoft and, store your Server 2000 or Server 2000.
On a side note, Google launched Google Drive, very creatively named. That is a similar service to Dropbox and SkyDrive and all that kind of crap. You get 5 gigabytes for free. The prices are pretty cheap. What was it? $50 a month for 100 gigabytes.
Mm.
No, wait, that's not right. $50 a month for a terabyte or something like that. It's significantly cheaper than Dropbox, and it works basically the same. So we're going to consider using that.
But it did rearrange all of Alan's files.
Oh God, it's the worst.
Oh, yeah.
Sort by that last
the
month.
humanity.
Yeah.
Josh, what do you got for us?
Me. I chose the Corsair 650D case. Is it?
I don't know.
It's a nice product. The price is a little bit higher, but what you get is quite a lot. USB 3.0 front ports, a lot of space inside. Really nice looking case without being too much bling. Obviously, you could mount the ECS gold board inside and still see the bling through the windowed cover. However, it's not jam-packed with LEDs and other things that will make your retinas burn out over time or make it look cheaper than Jeremy's ex-girlfriend or ex girlfriend. Anyway, get it? It's nice. It's solid.
Bear with chainsaw arm.
And bears with chainsaws cannot destroy it.
Alan, last on our list for episode 199 of the PC Perspective podcast. Don't let us down.
Oh, I'm going to let you down. No, it's actually kind of all right. So I didn't know this existed until the other day, but I am kind of particular about writing implements, right? So, you know, I hate like mechanical pencils and the lead breaks and regular pencils are even worse, crap like that. Okay. Sharpie makes a pencil that's actually works like a pen. Like
have you tried Quill?
It's like a pen. No.
They also have really bad website design.
So this is like a mechanical. Well, not. It's like a regular pen. It's a ballpoint, except it.
What
writes,
if I want a Sharpie?
Except it writes number 2 lead. It just works. It's like.
Is it liquid number 2 lead?
Prostate problem,
It's
right?
it's graphite. It's liquid graphite, and it has an eraser, and it erases. And
it's pretty sweet,
a
actually.
pencil.
Is it $24?
It acts as a lubricant in certain conditions.
Yes, but yeah. I mean, they were cheap. It's like a couple bucks at the Office Max whatever thing. It's and I don't have to worry about breaking the
Is it made
lead
with buckyballs?
What do you use a pencil for exactly?
Things that you need to be able to erase.
Does it have an eraser on it? Or do you need a liquid eraser that comes separate?
Not only does it have an eraser on it, but
my
it's really
golf scores is pretty much the only thing I can think of that I've ever used a pencil for.
It's like real high density rubberish kind of stuff. So it doesn't regular eraser, you use it like twice and it's gone. So this is like you can use it a whole bunch. And
Did you really? Ken already ordered them apparently because he's in school.
And it should be conductive too.
See?
Yeah, but you're not in school, Alan.
What? But I do technical writing stuff all the time.
See, here's what I say.
On the web.
If you are confident in your
Alan should
calculations,
just use a grease pencil because he's an ex-submariner. It's got glass walls.
Don't be knocking the grease pencils.
I am not knocking the grease pencils. They've worked great for the last 100 years for underwater forces.
Pencils work.
I'm just saying,
awesome.
if you were confident in your calculations, you would write that shit in pen. Boom. All right, that's all we got. We're going to round out the 199th episode. We will be back next week for the 200th episode of the PC Perspective podcast. You need to be here for this. It's going to be an extravaganza of epic proportions.
You should see the shirt that I have picked out for it.
He's going to wear it on his face, though, so we don't have to look at him. Be glad we're going to come back, because if we weren't going to come back to do the PC Perspective podcast anymore, there was going to be the Josh Walrath shirtless variety hour, and it involved Vaseline and all kinds of weird clips and stuff.
Yeah.
And
extensions, hair extensions.
Anything would be.
Oh yeah, they'll be in the mail tomorrow, Josh.
My weave is going to be here on Friday.
Ironically, what's going to happen is I'm going to move to Austin tomorrow, right? I'm going to drive my ass to Austin, Texas tomorrow But then, because I'm so excited about the 200th episode of the PC Perspective podcast, I'm going to fly back to Cincinnati and come do that show right here from the studio. That's how excited I am about what we're going to do in the 200th episode. Hey, Ken, did you figure out what we're going to do next week?
Oh, yeah.
Good, we got it all.
Steak and shake, right? Steak and shake and mineral oil.
So, all right, there you go. We're going to move to Texas. I'm going to fly back here because it's so exciting. And that's it. PCPro.com/podcast. Make sure you're there. You'll want to watch this episode live. Not this one, the next one, like next week's, 200, at PCPro.com.
200.
200. We're all going to have liquid pencils and drawn each other. Actually, we're not going to do that because you guys are still going to be someplace else. So yeah, stick around next week for that. Just stay on the PCPro.com/live page until next week, and we're looking forward to that. So with that, thank you for listening to our 199th episode. We will be back for the 200th episode. I'm Ryan Schrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Alan Malventano.
Turns out we will see you next week. So there you go.